Here we are, day 77 of the quarantine, or at least it feels that way to me. It may be a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's been a while that we've been locked up. So today we have a very exciting guest, Phillip Clayton, who is a philosopher and Ingram professor at Claremont School of Theology. He has taught and written for several decades on relations between science, religion, and ethics. A smattering of the books that he's worked on include The Explanation from Physics to Theology, God and Contemporary Science, The Problem of God in Modern Thought, Mind and Emergence from Quantum to Consciousness. And he's currently working on another book, I am pretty sure. In addition to that, he's also currently working at the Institute for Ecological Civilization, which I think is his main passion these days. And there he is researching on societal changes that are necessary for establishing sustainable forms of civilization on this planet, planet Earth. So again, this is near and dear to my heart. As most of you guys know, that's kind of what our teams is into also, is the idea of building a better world that works for all of us and is sustaining for the long term. So very excited to have Phillip on today. Welcome, man. I feel like we should have a glass of wine based upon our last meeting, but this coffee will do. How you been doing?
Hey there, Joel. Greetings.
Hello, pal. How are you, man?
Good to see you. I was just looking around the Apogee site a little bit and seeing the kinds of businesses that you've been involved in for, you got close to 20 years, right? Or 15 years?
Yeah. Just celebrated 17 years in business. Yes.
2003, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's an interesting niche because you have conservation, and you're trying to balance conservation and business interests.
Correct.
It's something that we bump into a lot. A lot of the people on conservation are anti-business, and that cuts, the scope of where they can have influence. But I've experienced it. We're working with businesses on global water issues, and I've experienced it as a delicate balancing act at times.
No doubt. I think, if you can get good at that, you can win a lot of friends and influence a lot of millionaires, right? So, yeah.
We decided to do a Cape Town event where we had a bunch of conservation types at a university, and we brought in business leaders from around the world, and we were jazzed at how they were talking and collaborating in ways that don't usually happen. And then afterwards, it's sort of 2 days later, all the conservation people got up in arms that they were being pressured too much. So what we thought was like, this is a conversation that has to happen. We pushed them a little too far. Business folks are fine. It's like, hey, we shared our thoughts and got some good thoughts, and we're all good here. But we had some ideological pushback afterwards. Everything hit the fan on the third day.
It's interesting, because maybe business people are better trained to deal with, emotion and tough situations and getting through. Whereas in some ways, conservationists are kind of, their heart is out there, right? And you can't step on that no matter what. And we got to figure out a way to kind of communicate a little better, right? So,
but that's where, and EcoCiv has decided to go. So, and a variety of their projects involve people who have the expertise, especially in water, the water delivery systems, the water technology, that's private. And the infrastructures are built by private companies. That's all who builds them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking about a huge pipe system, a gray water system, a desalination plant. It's all private industry.
Right.
And so public-private partnerships is the name of the game in supplying water in Global South.
Okay. Yeah.
But the pushback's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I guess if this was easy, anybody would do it, I guess, right?
Tell me a little bit about what makes you tick, because I read your Facebook page, and I see blogs, and I see a broader philosophical framework. I see you as a businessman with a successful, multiple, but this particular successful business. And what's interesting to me is how you put them all together. There's usually inside us a particular vision that each of us gets to carry and try to bring about in our leadership roles. And yours is broad, like EcoCiv's is broad across multiple sectors.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, it's I'm trying to figure that out. One, for me, like my search right now is for ultimate reality. You know, just what is reality for me, and I'm diving into that. And in the process of that, I've kind of understood some things for myself that I see as a humanity-wide issue, which is that most of us humans are operating from the lizard brain, right? The kind of the old school fear, fight or flight kind of brain. And so evolving and training ourselves to work more from our more advanced part of the brain, I saw that for myself, that it created such a change for me. And I think that this is what is holding civilization back right now, right? It's what makes those conversations difficult that you're having with those conservationists and business people in Cape Town. So it's so for myself, I'm really digging in on that front to try to deepen myself and get more firmly planted in this moment. And then it's to help other people do that, to then create a change from there. Because I don't think, the beauty that you're bringing into the world with your project, what I'm trying to bring in, none of it's going to work if people are operating from a space of fear. So
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
so it's how do you create that change, over time, one person and after another, until there's really, really change, is kind of what I'm into these days. And that's kind of what our teams is. So,
Mhm. So it feels to me like the newest energy for you is in the Facebooking posts and the conversation there. So probably I'd start as a philosopher. The ultimate reality question is one that I'm very comfortable with. I mean, we do think that in some way you presuppose some view of ultimate reality, however you live. If you're acquiring, spending money on yourself and your friends, that's a kind of view of what ultimate reality and values are about. If you're, the pastor in the rural congregation up in the hills, you're saying what you think reality is about. And so it is the right question for me. It's presupposed whatever you end up doing. So what would you, where's it taking you to? Do you think we can formulate? Or are you beginning to say, oh, no, ultimate reality question is not my question anymore?
No, actually, my first question I wanted to ask you today is why are we here, right? As a humanity, as a consciousness, your consciousness, my consciousness, the humanity-wide consciousness, why are we here?
Yeah, rather than starting theologically or metaphysically, I would just say, so I'm 64, I'll die soon. I've outlived my parents' age. Both my parents died younger, and one of my sisters already, so we don't last long in my family. And my sense is in whatever, and I used to race motorcycles and cars, and I have always lived kind of on the edges. And my family, actually, Seth was in the pit crew when he was 12 or 14, helping to move to race cars at Sears Point. But I've always felt like I wanted to have a depth and intensity of experience and learning. So if you say to only give you 2 words, I'd say soul growth.
Mm-hmm.
So soul growth, yeah. I'll leave that there. And soul growth turns out not just to be how many toys can I buy, or fares can I have or something like that, but it's relationships of love, depth of empathy, and moving the needle in the right direction through whatever leadership positions I can carry.
Mm.
I do think that love and compassion are for me, just are the basic ones. That soul growth is growth in love and compassion, in empathy, in the way that one lives with others. So then you say, okay, fine, that's your particular values. What about humanity? And I said, well, just as my self or soul is involved in an evolutionary path from birth to death, and maybe beyond, so humanity, as the most intelligent animal on the planet, is involved in a similar process of growth. and I won't say I don't believe in a humanity's soul, but there's a sense in which our culture and our way of living with each other should be analogous to what each of us tries to do in our short amount of time on this earth.
So Phil, how is the Institute for Ecological Civilization? How does it play into that role? Do you see that being your focus, right? Compassion and love. Is this a vehicle basically for you to put that out into the world, you and your group, or can you just talk a little bit about that?
So I mean, personally, I've done a lot of writing, a lot of speaking, teaching, mentoring, as well as, family and friends level. But EcoCiv is not, so that's a lot of, I don't know, one-on-one and also more explicitly religious things. But EcoCiv is a secular organization. It's does not itself represent a religious position. And its goal is to help humanity find hope and direction by asking people to think, what does it look like when humans do finally live in a sustainable way on the planet? When we do finally, integrate our lives with the lives of the whole Gaia, the whole planet as a whole, the ecosystems around us. If we don't ever do that, then we die eventually. So the if is, if we're going to make it, we're going to do this. What's it look like when we actually do that? Talk about that vision. And people get tears in their eyes and they say, I feel hopeful, even imagining this future state.
Tell me, what does that look like? Can you describe it in a minute or two, what it looks like?
So that's the visioning, but three parts: visioning, backcasting, road mapping. So beginning with the visioning at that level where people can begin to get a picture, whether they're ordinary folks, man or woman on the street, or whether they're experts in water policy or urban renewal or urban revitalization or international business practices and economic models. So visioning, then, all right, from that point, we don't know if it's 2050 or 2100 or 2300. We're not prophets. But from that point, what does it mean to work backwards from there to orient our presence in the world at this point in light of that goal? So backcasting is, they do it in, you could think of kayaking down a class 4 river, and you see the rapids for 100 yards, 150 yards ahead of you. You see the calm water at the bottom. It's a class 4 river, so there's only 1 or 2 ways down that won't kill you, right? And you can make a couple mistakes, but you gotta be on one of these 2 or 3 paths, or you're out of there. And so you take from that goal and you think back by rocks and keeper waves and boulders and stuff to where you are. Okay, I gotta get to, and having worked your route from the end back to where I am, as you're sitting up there at the top, kind of hanging behind a rock and looking at it all. And then you say, okay, so this is how my route has to be, road mapping. So vision, backcasting to where I sit right now above the rapids, and then the road map is the sort of course that you plan through it. I'll just say that I'm convinced of 2 things, that it has to be longer term than how most folks think. A politician gets reelected in 2 or 4 years. In business, if I sign a contract 20 years out, my risk is so high that it's not worth signing, because I'm not actually, my odds, my knowledge that I'll be able to make my profit over 20 years is too low, right? So with every contract, the longer the time, like look at COVID, right? If I had responsibility to deliver services or pay something, now I'd be in bad shape, right? So business is not as long-term. Politicians aren't. Visionaries are, but they usually don't know how to roll up their sleeves and change stuff, right? Environmentalists can envision a thriving biosphere, but I need folks who can talk about what are concrete steps, our roadmap for change, whether it's conservation, preservation of species, whatever it might be, mitigation, adaptation to environmental change.
Was it E.O. Wilson who wrote that we need, as a humanity, to preserve 40% of our natural areas if we wanted to sustain this planet? And I'm guessing that's one of the visualizations is something like that for you guys. It just seems like it's built into the name of your group. So,
that's actually a really helpful example, Joel. If you think of like that. So we're doing our visioning, 40% in preservation. All right. So now we're moving our back to the present. We're saying, now, what are we going to do? Right? Imagine I'm a philanthropist and I have 5 million to invest before I die. I'm going to say, well, some of that's going to go to preservation directly, and some's going to go to policy, and some's going to go to short, medium, and long-term forming of organizations or doing work or lobbying or whatever it might be.
Totally.
Where's this taking you, though? I want to make sure I'm listening. I'm more interested.
Yeah, no, totally. You're doing a great job listening. It's I mean, for me, again, the future is this. It just starts with each of us, and it's to me, like if each of us could start operating from that higher portion of our brain and in that space of compassion and love, right? That's where that kind of space resides. If we start doing that, everything else will be simple. Everything in the world will make sense. The systems that we design at that point will make sense. Whereas I think that most of the systems that we've created as a humanity has come out of a space of fear and protectionism, and none of them are probably truly going to work, whether it's socialism or capitalism or whatever. So to build something that's actually going to work, I think we need to change ourselves first, and then once we've evolved to that higher state of consciousness, then we create the systems that we want to go forward with. So that's kind of my vision.
Me too. You saw I began with this inner soul development, right? Mm-hmm. And then I moved to humanity as a whole. I recognize it seemed selfish, but I think that's a commitment that both of us have. What about the feedback loops, right? That you and I in our leadership areas try to construct a world such that individuals can grow and live into their calling.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's kind of a part of the Our Teams thing. That's where the cryptocurrency of Our Teams comes into that play, is to pull people towards that development. And then from there, it's anything can happen, right? Again, I think it's an issue trying to create systems right now. I mean, obviously we have to have rules to live by, governance to live by. But in some ways, I think the focus should be developing, ourselves and, on a grand level, a global level. And then once we've did that, and it could happen very quickly, that's the cool thing about today is you're in California and I'm in Kentucky, right? We're having this conversation. Information can travel instantly now. So it's like, there's a chance that something could happen very quickly. And if it did, then from there, we just create the change that we need and together, right? As opposed to right now we're separated. We have walls everywhere. We need to let those walls dissipate. So
it's like a tipping point. We know when a tipping point comes that there can be change like the humanity has never seen before.
Right. Yeah. We actually use that description in the book, artemic tipping point. Yeah, when the level of humanity gets, right, maybe it's 2 billion people, but are vibrating at that higher level, it will kind of be no returning to that from that point.
So for us as change agents, then the question is, what are the strategies that we can pursue that get us closer to that tipping point? And
well, I mean, from my perspective is how do you create that change for each individual again? And it's, to me, there's two issues in the world that are holding us back as a humanity. One is most of us are operating from a space of fear. And two, we have really bad leadership and leadership that is controlled by the elite and by money, So the path for me in this moment is how do we fix those two issues? And our team's attempts to fix both of those issues. So, and one is by, using the cryptocurrency, but also aware leadership to induce, kind of a global consciousness evolution. And then the other one is just selecting very wise and aware leaders around the world who will kind of be the seed to start this growth. So yeah.
The cryptocurrency, I see I'm not a specialist in it, but I see why that gets around a certain control of monetary supply using existing currencies. I mean, they really exist as a tool for those who create them, banks, to own more of them, stockholders to own more. If you have a massive amount of stock, then you become richer through every crisis, no matter, they said number of people in acute hunger need by the end of the year goes from 130 million to 265 million. But those who possess wealth will be richer by the end of the year.
Interesting, right? I actually posed that question to someone last week. It's like, is this more than just a coincidence, right? It's like the housing bubble in 2008, the pandemic today. It just the elite coalesce their power even more and more, right? It's poor and medium income people are losing their houses, and the elite snatch those up, right, and then rent it back to them, so yeah, no, so all these pandemics and really world issues, the people in control love it, I would imagine, because they're just strengthening their hand.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting position that we're in.
So a French economist named Thomas Piketty, he studied balance of wealth from 1900 to 2000 in a recent book, Piketty, or
Piketty,
Piketty, or maybe Piketty, I can't remember. And found that we had the greatest disparity in 1900, the greatest closeness in the 1950s, and even greater disparity in 2000.
Right. No, I love his ideas. It's I kind of would like to incorporate his ideas as the kind of, in some ways, the arrow that could create the change that we want, and our teams could be the bow that kind of puts that into the world in some way. His ideas of, I know his last book, I know he had the idea of if you turn 25, you get 150 to $200,000, right? Every person in the world, kind of, and it's kind of this wild, kind of interesting stuff. But for me, growing up very, very poor, and being hungry many, many times at the end of the month as we were waiting on food stamps to come in. If I knew that when I was 25, I got $150,000, right, to create a life, right, that would buy a house, that would get you situated in a place to where you then can start operating from that higher position, right? There would be that lesser fear there, and just the walls around you to protect you from that fear. And as a society, that's when we would start prospering, So yeah, no, I love Piketty's ideas, and the question is just how do we get them out there, right? Because no politician, even in France, is going to do that, and definitely not here in the U.S. So it's so how do you do that is the question.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other dimension of the two. You said cryptocurrencies, and then you said leadership development, like growing new kinds of leaders, because we've been so let down. The current ones are so supporting the current system and selling out on the kind of broader vision you've been describing. What are some of the concrete ideas, the strategies that are in your mind or that you've implemented in some of your work in the groups and stuff?
The idea is it's not, none of this has been implemented at all. The book should be finished in a week. It was actually supposed to be finished being edited today, but in a week it should be finished.
Congratulations! I didn't know so close.
Yeah, thank you. But the idea here is our current leadership is what it is, as we all know. And to that, my question would be is like, what would we want ultimate leadership to look like? And I would say to you, like, could you picture one being who's currently alive, who represents the things that you really appreciate in life, compassion and love, and who would you like to look at on the mountain over here, kind of leading humanity into the future? Is there someone like that you can think of off the top of your head, Phil?
So I I don't have any orthodox religious belief, but I have tried to mold the way I live in the world on the Sermon on the Mount, which I think offers a picture of a way of being like, yeah. I have come to feel that we're very much the product of our networks in a network age. and I'm interested in helping to form networks or mold networks that produce kinds of people. The modernist model was Hegel said in the 19th century, the world historical individual, Weltgeschichtliches Individuum. There, Napoleon was his model. Somebody who just alters the face of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tended to think less about that and more about the way in which we're nodes that are result. I have 17-year-old twin boys now, and they are molded by being Gen Z and what they see on YouTube and
Mm-hmm.
YouTubers.
Yeah.
And who posts the Instagram posts. That's their model. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a single hero. It's they're more influenced by memes, the memes that are in their networks, than by any person who's a role model. When I was a kid, my sports coaches and older guys were my role models.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was really weak and sick, and that didn't happen so much. But I was always looking for an individual. But my sons aren't the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And it's because of that the potential, we have such a great potential right now. Again, it's like it's not on a local level, right? When you were a kid, it was your community, it was your coach, it was your teachers, it was your preachers that influenced your world. But now your kids, it's global, right? It's and everything is spread instantly everywhere, and that's what's influencing us as a race, as a society. So the potential is amazing, right? There's definitely some downfalls to that, but the potential is incredible, I think.
I guess it's a really interesting question. Now you're going to have me think about this all day. It's the old philosophy debate of individual versus society. So if it's the individual, then I try to give him or her the kind of positive influences that make them grow into everything they can be, the most profound individual, transformative individual they can be. But if society molds the individual a lot, then what are ways that I can influence the social factors? So as I've spoken around the world, I've often talked about having a bit of earth that's home for you. I mean, it's so clear that the adjective appellation is so rich on your website. It connotes values and stick-to-itiveness and work like hell, and this kind of, we don't give up. And it's everything that's strong in that region that makes strong men and women. Well, I'd like to find the factors that go into building appellation. So somebody knows what the word Appalachian character means, and say, what are some of those factors? And nature's a huge part of it. It's a gorgeous part of the world, right? So kids that live in, I worked with Jane Goodall in the past, and when she said, I want every person to know there's a bit of nature that's their own. She launched an organization called Roots and Shoots, had branches in 185 countries. And she said, everybody is able to put down roots and grow shoots. And in that, they find something that humanizes them, that how can I say, ecologizes them through that. I mean, so that kind of systems change is where I think I found, I'm out of the, as a young Christian, I try to convert people and Billy Graham crusades and stuff like that. I'm much more interested in the kind of systemic changes that mold people. Get your hands in the dirt, do some farming. I take my students out to a local urban farm.
There's a similar quote around here that's grow where you're planted. So, kind of a similar type thing. And real quick, it's 1:29. Do you need to get to your next meeting?
Yeah, I got it. These guys are waiting downstairs. But tell me you're kind of sort of stepping back from this conversation, the main things that you see and the main things that are driving you in light of the way we focused it.
The main thing that's driving me is putting our teams out into the world right now, and again, and the thing is like, to me, I'm just trying to experience as much as I can. I want to grow on a personal level, and I want to experience a lot, in this human body as much as I can, and just have fun, compassion and love are two things that I'm really trying to mold in myself. But it's in each moment, right? It's this moment of talking with you. This is beautiful, the salon that we did a few weeks ago, that was so fun. It's I'm actually working on a song right now that I've never sing or anything in my life, but I got a buddy who's a musician, and we're making a song, right? And I'm going to put a video together, and so all these ways I'm learning different things, not to get anywhere, but just to experience it. I think that's the point of life. I think for myself is just to experience life. And as I'm doing that, if you can create a situation that helps people around you and the world in general, that's cool, right? That's a great thing also. But for me, it's I feel I'm a singular being, but also connected to the full. So,
nice.
Yeah.
The individual and the whole, ultimate reality.
Yeah.
Joel, thanks for taking the time to talk. That was a conversation we wanted to have.
Yeah, totally, man. Let's do it again. I'd like to talk with you more about how what EcoCiv is doing specifically to change reality, and if there's a way that we can team up and do something together. So
beautiful. All right, and
man.
good luck with the work and with the book next week.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Take care, buddy.
Take care now.
Yeah, bye-bye. Well, how damn cool was that? Phil is a fellow I just met in the last month or so, and is just incredible. It's given me so many things to think about, and I would recommend that everyone go check out their website. Again, they're doing a lot of cool things. It's ecociv.org, ECOCIV.org. Again, they're doing a lot of great stuff. And again, follow us here at Our Teens, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, or just following us on the website and the blog. Join in on the conversation. Let's create a better reality for everyone together. So thanks again, everyone. Enjoy this moment. Bye-bye.